Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live, and today I am joined by the founder and creator of Wordsmith, one word, all one word, Wordsmith Studios. I am joined by the founder of Wordsmith Studios, Eunice Smith-Shelley. And let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I always bring you guests that will level you up, and today is no exception because this lady has so much knowledge when it comes to the film industry. It is absolutely amazing. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about so many things, but make sure that you are following her on Instagram and Threads. If you are not, we're going to do all of that at the end of the show, so you'll know where to find her because you definitely need her in your life. But I'm just going to give you a small uh, introduction to who Miss Eunice Shelley Smith is. Eunice Smith-Shelley is a filmmaker, strategist, and industry disruptor redefining storytelling behind the screen. Her 30-year career in corporate leadership, process engineering, and creator entrepreneurship has transformed the way she moves stories from concept to production. Her path wasn't linear. After decades of leading global teams in lean systems, operations, and process development, Eunice walked away from corporate America not because she lacked success, because she refused to structure replace substance. She has spent years optimizing industries, but it was time to optimize her own purpose. So she founded Wordsmith Studios, a teaching production studio designed to empower underrepresented filmmakers with the strategy skills and resources to create without waiting for permission, which is so vitally important. Her innovative frameworks cut through industry gatekeeping, ensuring that creatives just don't learn how to write, produce, and direct, but that they have agency for their own economic sustainability, your IP, leveraging what they learn to their own content, monetizing their efforts. You are a business and sustaining their careers. So, Miss Shelley, welcome to A Conversation with. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I'm so flattered. I mean, I know all of the things are true, but to hear it being read, it feels good. So I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So, for some strange reason, we have a delay. So, this show may be a little interesting. I'm not sure why there's a delay. So, you may hear the question answer and then you see a delay, but that's fine because you are still going to get the good stuff. And one of the things that I always like to ask my guests is, even though I just read your bio, how did you get started in the industry and why did you make the switch?
Very good question. So the way that I got started in the industry is really interesting. I've been a writer since I was 6 years old. How the kids say it, no cap. But the neighborhood that I grew up in, writing wasn't a career path, anything creative, right? That just didn't exist. So I like to say I was always writer adjacent. So I took positions that allowed me to do a lot of technical writing, instructions, processes, guidelines, things like that, but never actually fully jumping into creative writing. And so when I started back into creative writing, I actually used to be an editor, and then I started to realize writers were all experiencing the same kinds of problems. That led me to start developing curriculum because in my corporate background, I was an instructional designer. So I learned how to actually develop training material that could be applied immediately to whatever was being done on the job. So this was critical positions in corporate, but I applied that same mindset and principle to teaching writers how to actually develop story. And then I started looking at screenwriting when a friend of mine asked me to help her learn how to write her own screenplay. And when I finished teaching her, she's like, Eunice, you have to share this. I had no intention of, I was into novels. I was a novel girl. And she told me, she started out saying she wanted to write a novel. I said, let's go. And the exchange was, she was going to help me develop my editing and writer coaching website. And in exchange, I would help her write her novel. But when we got into the second week of an 8-week engagement, she shifted gears and said she wanted to write a screenplay instead. That was my introduction to script mechanics. I fell in love, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay, so that's phenomenal. That's very interesting because when I was researching you, it came up, again, as I read in your bio, that you were in process engineering.
Mhm.
I never heard of that field. And when I did some research on it, the thing that stood out was it involves design and implementation, optimization to convert raw materials into everyday products. And that sounds a lot like screenwriting. You're taking something raw and you're turning it into something, you're actually creating a story. So did you use your experience as a process engineer as one of the pillars of your new career as far as screenwriting is concerned?
So absolutely. So one of the things that I was able to do is take the idea and the creative process and my ability to coach, because I was also a people leader in my corporate days with my corporate hat on. So I not only learned how to train people and how to develop processes from scratch and optimize, but I also learned performance management techniques. So I married all of these things together and overlaid my own passion for storytelling and just asked the question, if I wanted somebody to be able to do this all the time, like rinse and repeat, what would that look like? And I started with just the story essentials plus script mechanics. And from there, it kind of blossomed into a framework for writing, a framework for production, and then a framework for learning how to direct your first short film. And that really all came to be through Flip the Script Film Fellowship, where during the pandemic, a friend of mine challenged me to come up with a competition. And so I came up with Flip the Script, and we took 15 filmmakers, no, screenwriters.
Mhm.
We took 15 screenwriters. It was all virtual, and we guided them through several challenges. So it was elimination based. We were live on Facebook every night for like 3 weeks, and we chose the final 3 filmmakers. They all flew into Chicago, and we made 3 films in one weekend. No, in 2 weeks. We
Oh,
made
wow.
three short films. And all of that was possible. Now, I was a brand new filmmaker myself, but all of that was possible because I borrowed from my corporate career and just overlaid my love of story and my understanding of, if you want to have a movie, you need these ingredients. And so I engaged some people who knew better than I did,
Mhm.
asked the right questions, and we got 3 movies out of it. Now, there were a lot of lessons learned in those first 3 movies, and those carried me forward. So 10 movies later, we now have a solid process that is absolutely repeatable. We've done 10 short films, including one that I shot myself twice and still just never released, and a documentary that I was able to direct. So that's how we got here.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. And I saw the we're going to talk about it a little later, but I saw the clip where you talked about your first film and how you almost end up in Cook County. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I wanted to talk to you about the creation of Wordsmith Studios and the fact that you created it because you wanted to empower underrepresented
Mhm.
filmmakers. And why did you want to fill that need? I get it, but for those who may not understand, when people say they're looking to help underrepresented filmmakers, why did you feel that was a need that needed to be filled?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I learned very early on when I started taking clients is not only were they experiencing the same issues, for example, not understanding how to write a marketable story, what it meant to go from the script to the screen, how to get the resources, how to hire a crew, all those things. I also recognized when we started looking at film fellowships and script competitions and even the festivals, the more noticeable or reputable festivals and opportunities were always being secured by the same kinds of people. And when I say the same kinds of people, I don't mean they can come from a particular race or particular pedigree. What I mean is they typically had gone through the paces of film school, or they otherwise had some kind of industry connections. And even those people, because I don't want to take away from their credits, right? Even those people had been in the game 5-10 years before they were getting what we would consider in corporate entry-level success.
Mm.
And that to me represented a problem. And one of the biggest things that I learned in my corporate career was root cause analysis. So I started to dissect that and say, what is really going on here? Why do we have so many creators, but such a small bucket of those creators that are successful? And so when I started to look at how to solve for that problem, I recognized that there were three things. We lacked the education, like we just didn't know what we didn't know. Then because we didn't have the education, that included how to connect to the resources, and not just money, but locations and information and how to do permits and the right people, right? And those two gaps led to an opportunity gap. And that opportunity gap has real economic impact. So that was a no-brainer for me. And the reason it's a no-brainer is not just because of the creators, but when you think about it this way, the entire industry is negatively affected by the lack of original stories that are being produced. And we're starting to see that truth show up in the data. So that was why it was a no-brainer. So I was a little bit early in my approach to addressing underrepresented creators, but the industry has absolutely begun to catch up. And now what we're seeing is studios laying off and companies shrinking and companies merging to try to deal with the financial impact of the decisions to not create the kinds of content that audiences are craving.
Yeah, and that is so true. And that really ties into the next question that I wanted to ask you regarding filmmakers. With everything you said, one thing that you said that really stood out to me was the fact that some filmmakers think that only talent is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of laid out why it's not enough just to be talented. If you have that talent, could you talk about that, getting filmmakers to understand that talent is just one aspect of a well-rounded film career?
Absolutely. So when I try to explain this to people who are in the industry, I often end up using sports because it's very easy to understand analogies. When we use sports, people understand it. So if we think about, I'm from Chicago, so I'm just going to say Michael Jordan. Some people might say LeBron James. Some people might say Steph Curry, and that's
Mhm.
okay. The point is, choose your favorite athlete from whatever sport, extrapolate that, right, into whatever applies to you, whatever resonates for you. Talent is what they were born with, meaning this is their God-given gift. Some people have a gift for carpentry. Some people have a gift of being able to sell things. They can sell water to a well. LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, they have a natural talent when it comes down to the game of basketball. They noticed it at a very early age, or their parents noticed it. But then they had to overlay that natural talent with something else, right? And that meant practice. That meant learning about the game, because it's not just enough to be able to dribble and shoot. You have to understand how to defend the ball, how to move the ball down the field, how to interact with other people, right? Because basketball is a team sport. And if you don't understand how to operate within a team, then you become more of a liability than an asset to that team. Well, the thing is, filmmaking is also a team sport. And if you come with only talent, meaning you haven't got any training, you haven't got any mentoring, you don't practice, then you come to the set, which is our field, our basketball court, and you're rusty and you're in the way and you're breaking equipment and you're wasting time. And time costs us more than money, because every minute is like $10. Right? 1 minute is more than $10. So time is worth more than money on a film set, because everything is time-based. And if you lose time, sometimes you can't even finish your project. So if you have a talent for writing or production, or you're good behind the camera or wherever it is, that's beautiful. But if you want this to be your career, you have to treat it the same way that a professional athlete would, meaning get the education to help you understand the lay of the land, your specific craft. That's the first part. The second thing is get mentoring. LeBron James has his own personal trainer, his own coach. Steph Curry gets up every day and shoots 500 jump shots before he lets himself rest. Kobe Bryant used to be the first one in the gym, the last one out, religiously. And they were all talented. They were all at the top of their game. And even after they had won accolade after accolade after accolade, that work ethic remained a part of the fabric that was woven into their character. And we understand that when it comes to athletics, but when it comes down to creativity, somehow we think that we don't need discipline. And that's where 98% of us lose our way.
Yeah, that is so true. And that was those analogies were amazing. And when you were talking about Kobe, I saw some of the documentary that they did on him, and he talked about the fact that he would have 3 practices by the time everybody else had one,
Mm-hmm.
because he would get up 3 in the morning, practice, take a break, then have another shoot around, take a
Mm-hmm.
break, and then he'd go to practice.
Yes.
And he had a couple of players ask him why he did that. He said, okay, if you compound everything that I do, starting at 3 o'clock in the morning, he said, I am so far ahead
That's right.
of everyone else that everybody's playing catch up.
That's right.
And you saw it, because when he was in his prime, they could not touch him. Same thing with Michael Jordan, same thing with LeBron, same thing with Steph Curry, because there have been multiple players in the NBA and throughout sports who were just as or not more talented than everyone that we just mentioned.
Exactly.
But the difference was you didn't practice. And the guy that I love, I'm from Philadelphia, my
Charles Barkley.
die hard Allen Iverson fan.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't even thinking about Iverson.
Yeah, but Iverson talked about years later how he would have had a much longer career, and more than likely a better career, and he's a Hall of Fame player, if he had had the same type of mindset that Kobe had.
Exactly.
He wasn't that type of dude, but he looked back on it and he was like, wow, where could I have been if I had that Black Mamba mentality?
Exactly. And that's without like stealing that terminology, that's what I try to instill in writers, is the mentality. And the reason for that is because every story that's going to land on the page has to come through you. And what I often deal with when I'm coaching writers and storytellers and filmmakers is they have a limiting mindset, and they don't even realize they have 2 types of BS that they're working through. And BS doesn't stand for what we often think of when I say BS. BS stands for blind spots and belief systems. Our blind spots is what we don't even know we don't know. And our belief systems are the things that we've either been taught through experience, sometimes taught directly, and things that we have told ourselves must be true, that keep us stuck and keep us in a limited space, so that even when we move, it's more like we're moving through quicksand than running on dry ground. And so what ends up happening is when I start working with a writer or a filmmaker, the number one thing I am working on with them is not the script, it's not the production plan, it's how to get them to think like an investor, how to get them to see the business and the art as equally important, how to get them to stop leading from a place of fear and allow themselves to fail forward so that they can learn faster and elevate themselves, so that I don't have to push, but we can walk together. And that is the real work. And when you learn that, you're able to go at your own pace, set your own course, and you can create the success that you want, whether you want to be an indie filmmaker or you're trying to chart your course to Hollywood. And I've helped both groups of people find what they consider to be success.
You said something just now. You said a lot, but the one thing that you said that really stuck out is the business.
Mm-hmm.
And having done this for a long time, as I learned more listening to people like yourself and other phenomenal people in this business, the one thing that I've learned to a person, they all talked about the disconnect with filmmakers when it comes to business.
Absolutely.
And how they don't see what they're doing as a business. Now, it's nothing wrong with being creative, but I always ask filmmakers exactly what do you plan on doing with your product once you finish with it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a product and you want a consumer to visually consume it and then purchase it via streaming, not so much DVDs anymore, but on a Tubi or Hulu or whatever. So if you're not thinking in the mindset of this is my product,
Mm-hmm.
and I must take and make the best product so I can then take that product to market, you're doing yourself a disservice, especially if you are asking someone to write you a check.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're looking for an ROI, return on their investment. And if your thing is, I just want to create, that's great. But again, okay, you've created a product. So now what do you want to do with it? And if you don't have the business acumen and you're not learning the business aspect of this, where is this going to be distributed? What am I going to do with this?
Mm-hmm.
You're leaving so much out there. And that leads me to my next question. Because you have something that you call your impact pillars.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like you to explain what you mean by the 3 impact pillars for screenwriters and filmmakers that would help them have a better business plan going forward if this is what they want to do.
So absolutely, let's get into that. But before we do, one of the things I just wanted to talk about really briefly,
please,
is we talk about you create this product now, you got to think about how to take it to market. That needs to be flip-flopped. You have to think about what you want to create and who you want to create it for before you even think about the outline. And the reason behind that is if you were trying to build a car, you don't build the car and then say, hey, come and tell me if this is the kind of car you like.
Right.
Do market research. You do competitive analysis. You do profit and loss statements. You start to budget it out. You start to figure out what's feasible. How can I release something quickly so that I can get it validated and then build more, right? That's the way that business operates. And as an entrepreneur, we understand that. But one of the biggest challenges is that writers say, I want to write what I want to write. And that's fine if it's a hobby. But as soon as you say, anybody outside of your family or your immediate circle is supposed to invest their time and talent into making your thing a thing, now you must be able to show the value of that thing beyond your own creativity. And if you think about who it's for after it's made, now you're trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, and then you begin to feel like the world doesn't want you to succeed. You understand what I'm saying with that? And so the idea behind write first, market later is what makes most people find themselves stuck, not aligning with festivals. The runtime is too long. They miss critical requirements that funders and investors might be looking for because they went 90 miles an hour, just left of where they could have been had they done the research up front. And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to create for the money. I don't want to create for the market. And that's okay. If you want to make passion projects and just put them on a shelf for somebody to see after you're long and gone, not a problem. But if you want people to buy into what you're selling, they also have to buy into you, which means you need to understand what it is about you that people can align with. So then when you think about pillars, it's like education. opportunity, resources, right? If you don't understand A, the craft, and B, the business and how they work together, if you don't understand those, then you are not interested in creating a successful career. That's first and foremost. And when I say understand, I don't mean you must go to film school. I didn't have the privilege of going to film school. By the time I realized this is what I really wanted to do, self-study was all that was available to me, both financially and from a time perspective, because I had to work full time. I couldn't go to film school. And I didn't have $125,000 a year extra to pay for film school. And I also had aged out of all of the grants and scholarships that would have paid for film school, right? So that's one thing. So you don't have to have gone to film school, but you do have to find the education. And if you're not willing to invest in yourself, programs like a lot of the people that are being interviewed on your show, a lot of us have programs, books, mentorships, and they're credible because we've learned from being in the trenches, right? But if you won't invest in yourself, if people say, I've heard people say things like, final draft is too expensive. I'm like, it's $200 and the license never expires. What do you mean it's too expensive if you want to have a career? A camera lens can cost you $500, and that's a cheap one.
Mm-hmm.
A camera itself, a camera body, a cheap DSLR camera body, $2,000. And that doesn't even have a lens on it. That doesn't include a tripod. That doesn't include all the cables. That doesn't include, like, filmmaking is an expensive hobby, right? So there's that one thing. That's the education. And then the opportunity, right? So you have to be prepared to take advantage of opportunities. And what I mean by that is we can't walk around like Oliver Twist with our hat in our hands and twisting it around and woe is me. Hey, can you put me on? Hey, can I come and be? No, what is your value proposition? What are you bringing to the table? Yes, your curiosity is important, but what do you know? How can you help? How can we ensure that you won't be in the way? How do I know you're not going to be a problem or even bigger, a liability? Because before I can refer you to somebody that's in my network, I have to vet you first.
Mm-hmm.
And if I send somebody to you and they clown, I'm in trouble, right? So people don't understand a lot of what they consider gatekeeping and blocking or whatever negative connotation they wrap around it. A lot of this industry is still personal relationship based. So much so that I've gotten to work with major networks like A&E just off of a phone call because somebody knew that I did something and they liked how I showed up on another project. And they said, hey, there's an opportunity that I can't take advantage of. And I wanted to make sure I could refer somebody that I could trust. People who have not worked in the industry don't understand. It's not post your resume on LinkedIn, get an interview and get hired. It's often 7 o'clock the night before. Hey, Eunice, I can't do this. Are you available? Yes, I'm available. I'm going to give you the producer's number. Producer calls. Hey, are you available? Yes. Here's where you show up. You show up and you do what they ask you to do. And if you do that well, you get more opportunities like that. And so that leads me to the last piece is the resources. And resources, oftentimes people think the first thing that they need is money. And that's not true. If you don't know what you're doing, all the money in the world just means you're going to blow all the money in the world. And so what I did was flip the script to understand what that meant is we gave people monopoly money, right? And one of the biggest things about Flip the Script is I intentionally designed it so that filmmakers or storytellers who had never made anything, mm-hmm. who had never been inside a film school, who had never been on a film set could get their first shot. But what they had to prove to me was that they were worthy of that investment without having proven themselves in any other fashion. So what does that look like? That looks like work history. That looks like personal recommendations and references. And that might be a supervisor. It could be your aunt. It could be your cousin. It could be your friend. It didn't matter. But who could vouch for you as a person? And what we did is we built them up the rest of the way. We taught them what it looks like to build a producible screenplay just from an idea. We also helped them understand what it looked like to not have a producible screenplay. This is too big. The idea, is too big for what we're trying to build, right? Or it's going to cost us too much to make it. And the cost doesn't necessarily mean money. It means if this is going to take 3 days to shoot, you only got 1 day or you only have 2 days. So what's the plan for the other 12 hours? So helping them understand resources, time, money, talent, social connections is one of the ways that it equips them to be successful in the industry. And I know that was a long-winded answer, but if you don't understand those 3 things and how they work together, you end up just taking on a very expensive hobby.
That was not a long-winded answer. That was absolutely amazing because that was an absolute masterclass. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't listen to any other part of this podcast, you need to listen to that because that was just an amazing, amazing breakdown of how things work in the industry. And I absolutely love the monopoly money because as soon as you said that, it took me to that episode of Cosby. Yes, I say Cosby. And he was talking to Theo.
Yes.
And Theo was talking about he wanted an apartment and all of that. And Bill gave him some money and started breaking down the cost of things.
Yes.
It is so interesting. I have 2 daughters. They're both grown now. They're both out of the house. But when my wife and I, when we would do things with them and we would pay for it, the sky is the limit.
Absolutely.
Oh, sky's the limit. But as soon as they got old enough to start making their own money and to buying their own things, I'm saying, oh, you're not going to get that. Well, Dad, it costs too much. Hold up. When it was our money, there was no limit.
That's right.
That is your money. Oh, so now you're thinking about it. And that's what they need to understand. Although you may have investors and you're using someone else's money, you have to be a good steward.
That's right.
Of that money. You just can't blow that money because guess what? You may get it that one time, but trust and believe you will never get it again because you've broken trust because they trusted you.
That's right.
And I think a lot of filmmakers need to understand that. They've trusted you with their hard-earned money. And money is not easy to come by, and especially in today's world. So if someone has that belief system in you and they have that faith, and you are not a good steward of their money, you're doing them a disservice. And that's not great. But that was absolutely amazing. But I wanted to talk to you about CineSpark and why you created. And you talked about what happened at the pitch meeting. So could you explain what CineSpark is and what it entails, as much as you can talk, as much as you can?
Not a problem. So the publicly available information is CineSpark is a new way to connect film funders and investors to vetted filmmakers that are ready for the investment conversation. That's the best way I can say it. And the problem that we are solving with CineSpark is the fact that every year, more than 50,000 projects never make it past the page. 50,000 at least. Now, you might be saying to yourself, there's no way anybody would ever be able to make 50,000 projects. Why do we care? And it's not that you want to necessarily try to pump out 50,000 projects a year. The idea is that even one project that goes unfunded, that means at least 10 people don't get a job. That means studios go underutilized. That means that a new project doesn't reach streamers, which means it doesn't reach audiences, which means the entire ecosystem suffers. Local economies like Atlanta and Chicago that are but basically production towns suffer because projects are not being produced. And that is a major stream of income for those communities. So why do we care? Because it makes a difference for the entire filming ecosystem. The entire film industry elevates when we elevate indie filmmakers. And that's the problem that CineSpark is looking to solve.
That is amazing. And it is so needed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of filmmakers, because I don't know if you know Hilliard Guess, but he talks a lot about pitching. He's phenomenal as well. But with that, you have to learn the art of pitching,
Mm-hmm.
and so much that goes into that. And you talk about the 3 P's of pitching. So can you explain that to the audience?
I'll be honest with you, I have so many frameworks. I could not even, like, some of them I don't have memorized.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will tell you is about pitching specifically is you have to understand your position. You absolutely need to understand how to prepare, right? And then who it's for. And I don't know if that's one of the 3 P's or not, because again, I develop frameworks.
Okay.
And I document them. I don't memorize them. I'm like the lyricist who doesn't remember my own lyrics. I just got them written down.
Okay.
But
well, let me give you the 3 that I wrote down.
Okay.
Preparation, presence, and passion.
Absolutely. Preparation, what, and passion?
Presence and passion.
Now, when it comes down to preparation, a lot of people think, oh, I know everything I need to know about my project. Great. But what about who you are as a storyteller? What about your past? What about your credibility? Who are you? How do you even get in the room to get a pitch? Because a pitch is a meeting. It's not a deck, right? It's not a PowerPoint. It's not a Canva. So how do you prepare to even get into the room? And that means knowing who you are, knowing who you're talking to, knowing what they care about, and how to position yourself so that the way you speak mirrors the language that they understand and they need to hear in order to give you the green light. And all of that is really so much about preparation. Like, we come with so much passion, right? We are passionate about our project. We are passionate about our story. We know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And sometimes that passion can turn into arrogance if we're not careful. And so preparation and understanding what you're really trying to build sometimes will help you understand all money is not good money. Maybe that opportunity is not the opportunity that you should take. It'll help you understand when to make concessions, because a small win is better than a big loss. It'll help you understand who you can partner with, who you should collaborate with, when you should say no because it doesn't align with your values, right? And everything that I put together into a framework, I try to do it in ways that are memorable. Like you say, the 3 P's there, and I got 5 P's, and then we got 3 R's, and like there are so many things because it's like this big cloud of things, all these micro lessons that go together, right? And I try to make it digestible so that people can apply it immediately. And once they apply it, they can learn, because one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that people learn better in context. Meaning, if I teach you about pitching and you never create a pitch, most of what I taught you goes out the window within 24 hours. But if I tell you this is what a pitch deck is, and here's how you put it together, let's do part 1, and then you start developing your part 1, you will have an application of that information, and then you'll never forget it. And I learned that a long time ago, but I even heard it replicated. And I apologize because this guy's not popular now, but he used to be somebody that I was really impressed by. Elon Musk has kids, and he has a school for his kids. And one of the things that he's noted for saying is that I don't teach them what a screwdriver is. We go into the mechanic room and we have them unscrew things and screw things in. And then when they finish, we say, and that's a screwdriver, and that's how you use it. That's applied knowledge. as opposed to here's how you pitch to Netflix. Well, guess what? All the gurus that are out here trying to get people excited and get people inspired and sell hope, they tell you how to pitch to Netflix. They tell you how to pitch to Paramount. What they don't tell you is 9 times out of 10, you're not getting in the room with Netflix your first time out the gate. The question is, how do you prepare? How do you create your position in the market so that Netflix even wants to talk to you? Because people are behind these decisions. This business is still people-based. It's people on the front end saying yes or no, and it's people on the back end validating whether or not they liked what they did. Mm-hmm. In the middle is all this process and all this churn, but at the end of the day, it's about relationships. If you've never done anything and you wrote your first script, why are you trying to chart off to California and pitch to Netflix? You have no value to them. They have a dozen scripts already that are probably just like yours. But at the same time, I don't want to shame you for your enthusiasm. So when I talk about pitching, I try to give people an understanding of the roadmap. Before you can pitch to Netflix, before you get on Amazon's radar, there's a way to go about it. And people can skirt that process. They sometimes can skip steps because we don't have control over our velocity once we begin building. So that roadmap is more of a recipe for cooking than it is a recipe for baking, right? Here's the difference. I'm a cook. I can cook anything under the sun. You give me a Pinterest recipe, a YouTube recipe, I can make it. But 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to measure. I might switch out some of the ingredients, and it tastes phenomenal when I'm done. But it probably doesn't taste like the recipe, the original recipe. A baker, on the other hand, baking is a science. So if you switch out an ingredient, for example, if it tells you to use milk and you use heavy whipping cream, you just change that entire recipe and the outcome may not be the same. Filmmaking is not like baking. Filmmaking is like cooking. So you can switch out ingredients, you can switch the order in which you do things, and you can still find success, because success is not linear in this industry. But if you're trying to go to Hollywood, I can guarantee you there's a path to Warner Brothers, there's a path to Universal, there's a path to Amazon, and it doesn't look like I just finished my first script and here I go off to the races talking about I want to pitch to Netflix. It doesn't look that way. And I feel so discouraged, and actually it pisses me off to see so many Hollywood gurus sell, here's how you pitch to Netflix. How would you know? How would you know? And why are you selling that as the next step and they just wrote their first script and you don't even know if their script is good? Like, tell them how to get ready and stop telling them how to, how you switched your career and you did these things that they can't apply to their daily lives. That's why CenterSpark exists. That's why Wordsmith Studios exists, to give people practical pathways to script their own success, however they define success.
Wow. And you know what? You're so right. When you have some of these people talking and they're saying, well, this is what I did. But see, what you're not telling people along with what you did was who you know when you did it. Mm-hmm. Because more than likely, if you got to that point, you had developed some serious relationships.
That's right.
With people that were in positions.
That's right.
That could put you where you are. And a perfect example of that is the Denzel and Spike Lee movie that's on Apple right now.
Yes.
That screenwriter, Highest to Lowest. And I love the movie. People didn't like it. I loved it. But they talked about the person that wrote that script. Mm-hmm. But you have to understand how connected that first time screenwriter actually was. So when you're talking about someone saying, well, this is how you pitch to a Netflix. Okay, well, that may be easy for you, sir, ma'am, because you already in that room.
That's right.
But for the average person that's writing their first screenplay, they're nowhere near that. And I'll use this analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I I didn't know years ago that when you go on Shark Tank or you go on America's Got Talent and shows like that, I was under the impression, not knowing that when they audition for the big dogs, the Damon Johns of the world. Unbeknownst
Mm-hmm.
to me, there are so many levels of auditioning
That's right.
to get to that final room. So when you're talking about someone saying, "Hey, this is how you get to Netflix," no, if you're even trying to get on Shark Tank, you got to go through they just had the Wheel of Fortune people in Philadelphia a couple of days ago, and there were thousands of people trying to audition. But you're not auditioning for the main people. You got to go through the steps, and it's so disingenuous, and it gives people so much false hope because they're thinking, hey, if I can just play it, you're not ready to get to them yet. And it's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, this is an amazing conversation, and I hope people really take notes and internalize what you're saying so that they'll know that there are steps to how you actually can have a career in the film industry. And with that, I wanted to talk to you really quickly because we're getting to the end, and I don't want to keep you all night because I got so many questions. We probably won't get to them. But you talked about how studios are strategically working to eliminate writers because people aren't really interested in the great American story anymore. And as opposed to having writers' rooms, they're having directors. They want to have directors kind of be in charge of the writing rooms to put their stamp on it, as opposed to having an actual writer's room. So, can you talk about that?
You broke up a lot. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Your audio is really choppy for me right now, and
Oh,
I'm
it is
not
it?
sure what's happening.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was trying to hit you in the chat. You might not see it.
No, I don't. Let's
It's
see.
getting it's getting better. It's getting better.
Okay. Wow. Any number
There you
better.
go.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can I can hear you. Now
Can you hear me?
repeat your question. I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. So what I was saying was you talked about studios strategically working to eliminate writers
Mhm.
because, as you said, people aren't interested in the great American story, and instead of having writers' rooms, they basically want it to be director led and director driven, as opposed to having actual writers' rooms. So can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So there's an actual example, WandaVision, but that Disney Marvel produced.
Hmm.
They didn't have a writer's room. And
Wow.
it was an experiment, and it actually created a lot of buzz in the industry. But ultimately, here's what it all boils down to. Because of the way that Hollywood is structured from a payment perspective, writers don't just get paid up front, they get residuals. And I know the residuals are pennies on the dollar to that individual. But from a business perspective, if you just think about it this way, it's like I pay you to make this pen, and then every time I sell a pen, you get paid again.
Hmm.
Maybe it's 2 cents per pen, maybe it's 2 cents for every 10 pens, whatever that arrangement looks like. Now, if you multiply that by hundreds of projects per studio, every time it's relicensed, all these things, that becomes a financial burden that becomes difficult to sustain. Right? So that's one aspect of it. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just talking about what it is. Then the other thing that a lot of people seem to forget, and because of, again, when we get so far into our passion, sometimes ego can take over. We tend to think that writers are the only people that develop stories. Absolutely not the truth. And I've said this publicly before. Producers are writers, directors are writers. And when I say writers, I mean storytellers, right? Editors are storytellers. Because in order for me to go from a script to the screen, everybody has to interpret a story in order for it to go from the script to the blueprint that we're going to use to schedule and create the budget and secure locations and cast talent and all the things that need to be done, right? And that producer needs to understand stories. So the more the producers work with stories, the better they get at understanding how to tell stories. Directors have to interpret that script and learn how to turn it into a visual story, which means directors are also storytellers. So every time we have a writer's strike, that leaves the industry in limbo. But limbo creates voids. And one of the things that humans are really good at is problem solving. So if our writers are not available, but our producers are, then we start to figure out how can we eliminate this risk, right? Because at this point, it's just all about risk mitigation. This is not about creativity anymore, because this is a business. It's the same way when teachers go on strike or when laborers go on strike. The people who have to make sure the widget still gets made must now figure out how can we make these widgets without the people who don't want to be the widget makers. Mm-hmm. Right. And that may be a crude example, but I need people to understand in the grand scheme of things how it all works. So what they did with WandaVision is the director had an idea. They set out and they put it together. Was it the best story? Probably not, but it did numbers. Then the other thing we have is AI. And that there's a lot of litigation and a lot of, whispering about AIs eliminating writers. And to a large extent, it absolutely can today. That's the reality. So the question becomes, if you don't have a value proposition beyond writing the story, are you really serious about building a career? Because writers are often writer producers, writer directors, writer EPs. For example, even actors are becoming executive producers, meaning they are investing in projects. They are learning how to get behind the camera. Kerry Washington is an example. Reese Witherspoon with her production company. Even Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey doesn't write anything, but she spearheads projects and then she acts. So the point is, it's not enough anymore to just be a writer and say, I just want to write my stories and sell my script and go off into the sunset. You can say that, mm-hmm. But then when you bump up against somebody who's a writer producer, a writer director, a multi-hyphenate, they know how to work the cameras, they know how to get behind the cameras, they know how to wrap chords, you don't stand a chance against that person. And so that's really what it's all about, is adaptability. And that's why I say that education is so important, because the more you know, the more you have an opportunity to get on set and learn those things that make you marketable.
Wow. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation, even with all the technical difficulties. It is what it is, but we always gonna make it do what it do. Final question. Mm-hmm. You've been doing this for quite some time. What advice would you give to anyone deciding that, you know what, the film industry is the industry for me and I'm going to dive in head first? What advice would you give them?
I have to borrow from the words of Simon Sinek. Find out your why. What are you going into it for? Is it because you think it's about fame and fortune? Or is it really because you feel like you have a story that the world needs to hear? And I don't mean one great American story. I mean stories within you. Are you here for the long haul? Is it a marathon for you? Or are you trying to become a 100-yard dasher and you think it's just going to be quick to the finish line, right? But once you understand why you want to do it, choose a path. Are you looking at being a writer director? Are you looking at being a writer producer? What is it that you really are good at, right? Because our natural talents typically guide us. right? Because, and a quick analogy is, you might want to be an accountant, but if you're not good at math, why are you even going down that path? You might want to be a rapper, but if you aren't, if you're shy, what are we talking about, right? So what are your natural talents? And then this is the same advice I gave my own kids. I have 5 kids and I love all of them and they have all done amazing. I told them, never go to school thinking it's going to get you a job. Find out what it is that you want to do that you would do for free. Find out the education that you need, and then go get that education and dive headfirst into it. Because the reality is, education just gives you enough criteria or enough credentials to say you don't know anything, but you're not going to hurt anybody. And then you get out in real life and you start actually learning your craft. So I say, figure out why you want to do it, figure out what it is that you're good at, and go get the education that aligns with it, and network up, across, below. It doesn't matter. Connect to people, because you need people, because filmmaking is a team sport and we can't do it without people.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. Woo, this has been an amazing conversation. We definitely have to have you back. I normally have a co-host, Okima T. Moore, but if I'm not mistaken, she's on set. So hopefully when
She's
you come,
always doing something. I love Okima. She's amazing.
yeah, she was like, "Oh, how are you doing an interview with my best friend and I'm not there?" I'm like, we'll definitely have Eunice back on.
And I would love to come back on, because we got
Oh,
a lot of things happening that we didn't get a chance to cover today.
yes, I could have you here all night, but I'm not going to do that. I said I'm going to keep it to an hour. But before we go, where can people find you?
Oh gosh, I have been fortunate enough to be able to secure the same handle everywhere. So my website is wordsmithstudios.com. And then on social media, you can find me at The Savvy Screenwriter, SAVVY, Savvy Screenwriter. I'm on Threads, Instagram, even LinkedIn and TikTok. Facebook, my name is Eunice Shelley. You'll find me there. I typically accept all friend requests from people that I can see are in the industry, unless you're doing weird stuff. Because I love to connect to people. I'm a social media networker. I've hired people from social media. I've been hired from social media. I've kicked off projects from social media. So that's probably one of the best ways. And I share a ton of information to help people understand what this industry is really about beyond the glitz and glamour. So follow me on all socials.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, 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 please follow her, because I'm telling you, the goal of this podcast is to level you up
Mhm.
if you are in this industry. That is the main goal of this podcast, to be a teaching tool and to
Mhm.
level you up and to give you the equipment to be successful. Now, success is relative.
That's right.
So wherever you are, if you are looking to be successful wherever you are, the thing that you need to do is you need to listen to people that can help you get there. So please follow Eunice Smith-Shelley, because I'm telling you, if you just go to her Instagram alone and start scrolling through the videos, because it's stuff that I wrote down that I didn't even get to. I'm gonna say that for the next time. But there are things on her Instagram feed, on her reels, that will level you up in the next 5 minutes. And that is no exaggeration, because there may be something that you're struggling with as a filmmaker and as a writer, and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I do this?
Mhm.
If you just go on her Instagram feed and start scrolling, trust me, the answer is there, because it's got so much free game on there, it ain't funny. It,
Mhm.
it really does. So I encourage you, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a screenwriter, or if you're just someone that's looking to be better at what they do, because some things are translatable and
That's right.
transferable. And a lot of that information is transferable,
It
and
is.
which is absolutely phenomenal. So again, make sure that you follow her on all her socials. Please reach out, and if you reach out, please be respectful. If you go into her direct messages, please be respectful, because again, this is a business of relationships. And if you go into her DMs being weird, you get blocked, and you could miss out on an absolutely amazing opportunity.
And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that. We don't want that, because I'm on Threads blocking like I'm in the NFL.
Listen, I do understand. And thankfully, I have had only respectful people come. And a lot of times they're asking me to work for free, and I just don't have the capacity to do that. But that's part of the reason that I put so much content on social media, because I can't reach everybody, and I want to give as much information as possible. And we have programs that are micro courses to kind of make this information accessible so that they can apply it and really start to build their careers, because that's really what it's about.
Okay, I thought I was done, but I gotta do a PSA. This woman has put in thousands of hours to get to where she is and to be at the level she is. So I say this with love, and I say this with kindness. Don't ask her to work for you for free. That's insulting. That is insulting. Because again, she has put in the time, the work, the energy, and the money to get where she is. So to ask her to work for free is insulting. She wouldn't say it. I'm saying it. That's not good. That ain't cool. Don't do that. If you are on a limited budget and you can't afford her, ask her to put you in touch with someone more in line with your price point.
Well, I'm starting to release courses that are as low as $47, because I understand.
See, there you go.
Sometimes the entry point, money can be a barrier, especially when you don't know who to trust and things like that. So yeah, courses as low as $47. I usually make it very easy to consult with me. Just go to the website or go to the socials, and if there's anything that I can do, I typically will guide them in a direction for them to take a credible and reasonable first step.
Good. See, there you go. So reasonable, credible, and that's wonderful. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining myself and the amazing Eunice Smith-Shelley. It is always an honor and a privilege to talk to people such as yourself, because I always learn when I do these podcasts. It's always something that I can then turn around and incorporate into what I do. So thank you so much for gracing my podcast. I look forward to you coming back, and Okima will definitely be here for our next conversation. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining myself and Eunice Smith-Shelley, founder of Wordsmith Studios. Wordsmith is one word. Wordsmith is one word. So if you look her up, if you look up Wordsmith Studios, type it in, WORDSMITH. There is no room between word and Smith. It's all one word, Wordsmith Studios. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining myself and Eunice Shelley on a conversation with. And as always, love it like a hobby, but treat it like a business. Everyone have an absolutely amazing, amazing night.
Thank you.
Peace.